All right. So in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So thank you for all coming. So here we are. We're going to finish up on the previous chapter, which we hadn't finished last week. So we're on page 174. This is the end of chapter 10 in Abba Dorotheos. So I'm going to quote on page 174. I'm going to read. It says, Abba Dorotheos says something sort of, he says, and anyone who beseeches God and says, Lord, grant humility to me, must know that by what he asks, he is as much as asking God to send someone to insult him. And so, in other words, when we ask God for the gift of humility or any virtue, he doesn't just give it to us like in a package and when we open up, we're all set, but he gives us opportunities to acquire the virtue by exercising it. So I think I tell you about this, that monk who got angry and was praying for deliverance from anger. Oh, so there's a monk who was in a desert, one of the desert fathers who was very angry, very irascible. He got angry very easily, and he would. So after just being really fed up with himself, how angry he would get all the time, he just once asked God, Lord, he just went back to his cell and just prayed and prayed and prayed that he would be delivered from this anger. And after he felt sort of, calm and collected, he stepped out of the cell and went and then the first person he saw said something to him that really just triggered him, and he just got all angry again. And then he ran back into his cell and said, Lord, what's going on? I asked you so I begged you so hard to deliver me from this anger, and you didn't do it. And then he heard a voice saying, and that's why I'm giving you more opportunities. so that because the way the only way we can get stronger spiritually or even physically is by exercising the virtues, by actually practicing them. So there's a chance to either choose to get angry or not get angry, and we do it. Or with humility, as Abba Dorotheos says, we can have there's an opportunity to either humble ourselves when someone insults us, or to just get, talk back, or just to justify myself or whatever. And this quote actually of Abba Dorotheos saying, "Grant humility to me," it reminds me of something sort of humorous. One of my Protestant friends told me back when I was in school that sorry, let me just mute this person. Sorry about this. But when you guys join, try to mute yourselves. So yeah, okay, thanks. Anyway, so this Protestant friend of mine says, never ask God for humility. It's a big mistake. Because he knew through experience that if you ask for humility, it'll be just as Abba Dorotheos says, someone will assault you, or there's some opportunity, some very humbling humility kind of thing. So of course, though, we're not Protestants, and we do ask God for humility because we know that we need humility. We don't have humility when we don't have anything. I mean, and that's one thing so important about the virtue of humility, which he's going to talk more about in other chapters. That it's really something that holds everything together. In fact, Saint Pius of the Holy Mountain, he said something very interesting about how we put God in a difficult position. He said that God wants to give us all the virtues, all the grace, all the gifts, but he says that he can't give it to us. Not that he's not able to, but he knows that if he were to give us all these gifts and blessings, we'd immediately become so proud that we'd just be even worse than we were. And so in other words, we're sort of preventing God from helping us and giving us gifts and grace and answering our prayers even sometimes, because sometimes even when our prayers are answered, instead of just thanking God for his mercy, we start thinking, oh, well, I'm a person who, I can get my prayers answered. Oh, this is pretty good. I must be on track here. And then that can be even worse for us than having whatever our request is fulfilled. Okay. So, and then on the bottom of, and towards the end of 174, he says, he's talking about how there are different ways you can respond to being insulted. And he says, for example, there might be one who not only rejoices when he is insulted and considers himself deserving of insult, but who feels sorry for having upset the person who insulted him. And so this is a very beautiful degree of humility, where you're concerned more about the other person's well-being than your own. And there's this one beautiful story from the Desert Fathers is in the Everyetinos rather. There's once a priest who is arguing with a lay person. Well, he closed the door, and the argument got so heated that the lay person actually punched the priest.
Oh.
But then the amazing thing is, when the priest got punched, instead of, I don't know, whatever he might do, he actually fell at the feet of the lay person and said, "Oh, please forgive me. I should have warned you what a big sin it is to punch a priest." So in other words, he was so worried about, concerned about the welfare of the other person. They wasn't really concerned the fact that he was just, punched or in pain or humiliated or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a beautiful quote from C.S. Lewis, who, even though he's not Orthodox, he has pretty much almost all of his sayings are in line with orthodoxy. And one quote he says, humility is not thinking less of yourself, mm-hmm. but thinking of yourself less. In other words, it's not thinking, "Oh, I'm bad, I'm more bad." That's, he says, that's not so much humility as it is to be not even thinking about yourself, because you're so, lovingly concerned about other people that you don't really have time to think about yourself. Which is, I think that there's a lot of truth in that, because that's I mean, a humble person, as we saw, like this priest who got punched, he wasn't, he was thinking so much about the other person, and that's a beautiful degree of humility. Okay, and by the way, just please jump in at any time if you guys have any comments or questions. Oh yes, Veorica.
What would you have to say to this?
Well, say a little louder so people can.
Yes. What would you have to say to this? Back in the days, let's say in the communist country, right, where the faith was really.
Yeah, put it right next to your mouth. Yeah.
Back in the days, in the communist country, where the faith was really oppressed,
yeah.
And people really did not honor the priest either, right?
Yeah.
So there was one circumstance, a very holy father saw this situation on the street where a lay person.
You guys can hear her, right?
A lay person spitted.
Okay, good. Yes.
Spitted at one of the priests.
Oh.
Because he was wearing the priest robe.
Yes.
Outside of the church.
Yeah.
So they were spitting at him, and this holy person saw the priest, and then he advised him, and he said, "Look, you don't want them to be condemned, so next time don't even wear them, so they're not going to be condemned even more." What would you?
Yeah. So you guys all heard that, right? Do you hear that clearly, everybody? Yes or no? Yeah. So I guess, I mean, in that kind of situation where, but just by being dressed as a priest in a communist country, you're gonna create people, you're gonna trigger people to react in a way that's actually burdening their souls. Yeah, well, I mean, this definitely takes some discernment there. You have to ask yourself, okay, well, which is worse, to be not wearing my priestly garment, like my robes, or to have these people actually sin. And so, yeah, so I can see how that holy person would be able to say that, yeah, you have to avoid that kind of, that kind of problem, because it is a very important thing in the spiritual life, not only to care for your own well-being and your own spiritual health, but as we're saying, to think more about the other people and to care about their spiritual health. And so if you're doing something that's going to trigger them, then that is a very serious sin, and that happens a lot actually with all kinds of things. I mean, for example, if you're very beautiful and you wear clothes that are revealing of your figure, well then yeah, you can be triggering other people, and then they're sinning, but you're also responsible. Or suppose you're well off and you have like really nice, whatever, car or house or something that really almost ostentatious, then that can make other people jealous and or feel inferior or whatever. And so yeah, so you have to be careful. In fact, they said, when I was in Mount Athos, they're telling me that it's important when we're living as monks, but also as lay people, not to be someone who stands out, because if you stand out, well, then you're drawing attention to yourself, and then that can cause temptations for other people. And this is actually in line also with what Saint Silouan taught. He said the truly humble person escapes notice, and this is something that he really mastered, because Saint Silouan was someone who was so humble and just so low key and just sort of under the radar, as they say, that even though he was one of the great saints of the 20th century, very few people, even in his monastery, realized that he was such a saint. And because he just kept made a point of not showing off his virtues, or not showing, in general. So yeah, so that is a very big lesson. Yes.
Would that also, could we take it as far as like people who like get tattoos or like put makeup on, or do their nails, or change their appearance?
Yeah.
Like, would that also, I mean, would you take it as far as that as well?
Yeah. So that is something that is I mean, the thing about wearing makeup is that for women is that it's become a norm in society, and it's to the point where although you can, if you go, let's say in many places, if people are working and a woman is working there and does not wear any makeup at all, it'll almost be disrespectful. Or if you go to a gathering, let's say to a wedding or anything really, and you come not wearing makeup, many people would interpret that as almost being disrespectful to them. So I hesitate to tell people to wear zero makeup, although it's definitely true that, if you fix yourself up very well, then it becomes. And I should be asking you guys who are women, what do you think about this? Because I think most of you are not wearing makeup, I think. So, but I mean, how do you see that? I mean, do you agree with what I said, that wearing makeup is something that's sort of necessary sometimes?
So
You're asking the wrong group.
Yeah, because all of you are not.
it's
Yeah.
like more about how you feel. Like if I'm comfortable with the way I am, no matter
Yeah.
where I'm at, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of like if you are poor and you look out for the riches, you are condemned because you want that in your heart. Same
Yeah.
thing with that. If that's not my desire anyway, and
Yeah.
that's the way I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. I can totally relate. If I were a woman, I can't view myself wearing makeup. I just don't see that happening. But yeah, so I think that is, of course, this is the natural way. This is how God created us. And I do tell people, by wearing makeup and changing your appearance, it's almost like you're saying, God didn't do a good enough job. I need to fix him up and fix it up, and make it better. So yeah, I don't know. Does anybody else want to comment on that? Because this really isn't a topic I'm expert
Or
in.
if you do it and you feel like a clown.
Yes,
all night,
Sophie.
you know?
I can say something that's okay.
Yeah, please.
I think there's been a huge, but gradual change of mentality on this
Can you guys hear him?
over the.
It is
decades.
difficult to hear Papa Ephraim.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe can you repeat the people's comments? Would that take too much time? It's difficult to hear the people in the room with you.
Okay. Well, I actually lost track of which comments were last, but
No,
Sophie,
that's okay. Just going forward.
okay, Sophie, why don't you just speak right into the microphone? We'll be
I think there has been a major shift and change of mentality on the issue of makeup over the decades, from the 60s, 70s, 80s to this century and these years. And I see that judging how my mother, my grandmother, my mother, my wife, her sisters, my daughters now. And there's also a big difference in this between Greece and America. I also see, because I've lived many years in both places. But back in those times when I was growing up in Greece, it was a sin, and if you wanted to be in the spiritual struggle, you couldn't use makeup as a woman. That's what I remember. But now the times have changed, perhaps, and I see that there's so much, how can I say, called peer pressure. The times have changed so profoundly that it might be very difficult to find a woman who doesn't use makeup nowadays. And women who, and I say that because of my daughters. I have 5 daughters, so I know how the younger women are thinking now. And if they don't use makeup, they feel that they are very disadvantaged in comparison to other women of their age. So everything is changing, and I don't know how spiritual fathers are now receiving that. And I guess. And now
They're watering things down.
Yes,
Yeah.
because of the change of times.
Yeah. You could all hear that, right? Online? Yes. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. Yes, a little louder.
Νομίζω ότι όλα αυτά που είπε, everything what Sotiri said είναι σωστό. Και bottom line, I think it's we have to use our διάκριση
Discernment.
depending on the family we belong, depending on the case, the occasion we have to attend. And the most important thing is to make sure that we don't lose the prayer while we are. The same is about the way we dress up, we get dressed.
Yeah.
It's not only the makeup, είναι όλη η μόδα, it's all the trends, it's all everything about how we decorate our houses, how we get dressed, how we it's a big number of things that we feel ourselves trapped sometimes, and the damage is the prayer. I mean, so as long as we can keep the prayer inside us and don't lose the grace of God. And the second is what pleases our husbands. For the men who can, I remember our spiritual father in Greece was telling us a story about a woman who was resisting not to put makeup. And this brought a tension between her and her husband. So this είπε, του είχε υπακοή,
You have to be obedient. You have to.
γιατί ο άντρας σου σε φέρει βαμμένη. Η άλλη είχε τα μαλλιά της σε
Can you say that in English?
Yeah, our spiritual father in Greece, years ago, I remember, he was saying about the couple that the woman was very pious and she did not want to put on makeup, and the husband was feeling very bad about that. So he told her, you have an obedience to put on makeup because you have to be liked by your husband. And or another woman who did not want to see movies and preferred to go to the vigil. And he said, no, you will stay Saturday night to see the movie with your husband. In so many things we have to consider, so it's not black and white.
Yes.
See, this is how I feel. And I was never putting on makeup. So I feel both sides now. I see my daughters, I see the occasions. So we don't have to overdo. All with moderation and the αγάπη και προσευχή.
And I think the bottom line is, whatever we do, how much does it help us to love God? If it distracts us and takes our mind away into other goals different from loving God, then maybe it's not a very good thing. But on the other hand, if you said before that Christians try to not be singled out, but not to stand
Stand
out.
out, yes.
So if you use no makeup and you stand out by that,
Hmm.
then maybe you have to do a little bit, I guess, just
Yeah.
to avoid being standing out.
Yeah.
But as long as your heart isn't in that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
your heart is in God.
I agree that it is something that depends very, very much on who you are and what your environment is, and also the reasons why. And especially and as you say, for someone who's married, I mean, St. Paul says that the body of the wife belongs to the man and vice versa. And so that implies that, if the man wants the wife to look beautiful, well then, I mean, within reason, that is a reasonable expectation. And 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 this is something where many times people would come to me in confession wearing a lot of makeup and really bright colors on their fingernails and something. And I could well, I mean, I'm sort of torn actually, because I know that when Elder Ephraim, as soon as Elder Ephraim ever saw someone with painted nails, he would immediately, point at their nails and say, and of course he could do that because people had so much respect and love for him that they could accept that kind of correction as like, oh, okay, yeah, this is actually coming from God. There's a reason for this. Whereas if when people like that come to me for confession, I say, hey, what's your nails? Depending on who they are, they might be like thinking, well, wait a second, what? You're here I am trying to work on my soul, and the thing you're focused on is my fingernails. And then like to say, of all the things, and that's what I'm thinking, because of all the people, oh, sorry, let me just mute that. Of all the people, of all the things that this person has to need correction on, I have sort of in my head a list of, okay, what are the most serious kinds of issues, medium issues, and then minor issues. And for me, whether or not someone's painting their fingernails is really a minor issue. And for me to jump right on that and ignore the medium and the major issues, it'd be sort of, well, not very discerning. And I think Saint Porphyrius would agree with me, because there's a lovely story. Oh, you know the story about the bathing suit?
Oh no, I was thinking.
Oh, okay. No, Saint Porphyrius. So this is just a classic. So what happened was there's a mother who wants her daughter to go with her to confession to Saint Porphyrios. And the daughter is already ready to go with her friends out to the beach. Oh, you know this one? Have I told this one? Oh, okay. Yeah. And so she says, but mom, my friends are way at the beach. I'm all set. I'm already wearing my bathing suit. I'm out. I'm out of here. But the mother is really strict. She says, no, this Father Porphyrius, he's a saint. You're gonna regret it if you don't see him for confession. You gotta go. You have to. She's like, no, I don't wanna. And finally, the mother just insists so much that the daughter says, fine, I'm gonna go. But she had so much stubbornness. She said, but I'm gonna go wearing what I'm wearing right now, my bikini.
Oh my
So she goes. So her mother's like, well, okay, I guess it's better than nothing. So her mother takes her to St. Porphyrius, and she's wearing a bikini to confession. And so she goes in, and St. Porphyrius greets her and does confession, and it doesn't say a word about what she's wearing. And then afterwards, the girl comes out saying, "Oh, he's a really nice priest." Yeah. So I mean, there's the idea of, and so I don't know what happened to this girl in the future, but I'm guessing that her heart was sort of softened towards the priest and towards confession and towards the church, and so that's the kind of thing where if Saint Porphyrius had said, "Hey, what are you doing? Don't you know this confession you can't wear bikini to then the girl would have said, oh, just all these stuffy ecclesiastical people, who needs them? I just want to hang out with my friends, forget church." So yeah, so it does take definitely discernment, but that doesn't, just because we have this idea of economia, and economia is this, what they say in English, economy, where we're not following the rules intentionally because in order to save the soul. Like that's what the reading was today in the gospel, that the idea that the Sabbath was not made for man, but man for the Sabbath. So yes, the Sabbath rule is a good thing in the Old Testament, but if we put this above and more important than the salvation, the well-being of people, well, then we're getting things all out of order. So I think, yeah, so I think that's at least how I approach this idea of painted fingernails and stuff. Yes, so did you put it down?
And I, with this example you mentioned, I remember an example of from Yehuda's Paisius that I was reading about a few days ago. It said that someone took his friend to Yehuda Paisio, Aigo Paisio, and this friend mentioned to Yehuda Paisio that he smokes 4 packs of cigarettes per day. And Aigo Paisio tells him, okay, from now on, I want you to smoke 5 packs of cigarettes per day. And then when the other friend, who was supposedly more spiritual, heard that, later one day he asked Yehuda Paisio, Father, I was surprised. Why did you tell him to smoke 5 packs of cigarettes per day? He said, this man had so many problems. Smoking was the least of his problems.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. See, there it is. Yeah.
There's this another story by Saint Porphyrios where some women were coming to visit him who were dressed really improperly, and I don't know if they were like improper women or what have you, but they started like all this gossip, right? And people kept saying, Elder Paisius, why do you let these people come to visit you and all this kind of stuff? And this was like Wounded by Love in one of the chapters, and he said, don't pay attention to the way that they dress or what they're doing. And he said, but imagine if she put that much effort into her spiritual life and into the Lord. And he said, then you'd see something really amazing, the transformation. And he goes, and that's what we need to focus on and what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. Yes, and give it the microphone. Put it close to your mouth. Yeah.
Bottom line, is it a sin
to wear makeup? Is it a sin?
Because Father Philip of Romania would say that at the tall houses you would stop for that. So I mean, joke, no joke, serious, no serious. It's good to know.
Yeah.
And then it's everyone's choice. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So I guess, I mean, since sin is defined as anything departing from God's will, it's missing the mark of God's will. Obviously, God doesn't want us to be all with all that stuff on our face and nails and everything, let alone the damage does to your skin and the chemicals and everything. But just this isn't the way of God. But I mean, of all the sins that people have, I really do believe it is a much smaller one, and so yes, it is a sin. But let's, if we're trying to help someone who's stuck in sins, let's see if we can sort of focus on the most important parts of getting them to love God and to love Orthodox tradition and see that as something that's beautiful, that's coming from the Holy Spirit. And then once we can convince them of that, well, then they on their own will say, oh yeah, well, if this is the way things are, I can choose, I can voluntarily decide, okay, I don't need this makeup, or I can just put on just a little bit just to make myself presentable enough for this such a situation. Okay. Wow, so that was an unexpected aside there. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Okay, so getting back to Abba Dorotheos, now on page 175, this paragraph 111, and this one thing here, he's asking questions like of different levels of dispassion. So he says, for example, does someone struggle with understanding to control his passions, or do or using one passion to fight against another passion, or we can ask ourselves, have we just begun to rule out the passions, or have we completely annihilated it? Or and then he says, let each of us determine at what point he is in terms of our struggle against the passions. And this is actually a very helpful way to approach the sacrament of confession, because this sort of raises the bar. It gives us much higher standards, because a lot of people, when they come to confession, they'll say, well, I don't have anything to say. I haven't killed anybody. I haven't robbed any banks. I'm basically just a nice guy. I mean, I'm, but then if you ask them, okay, well, what about these passions? I mean, if someone insults you, do you feel sorry for them, or are you triggered? Or someone praises you, does that puff you up? Or someone, all these more subtle things, then you can see that, oh yeah, well, actually I have quite all these passions are still alive in me. They might not be alive very much, or they might be medium, but they're alive. Okay, and then he says that we need to examine ourselves, not just every day, but also at regular intervals of time, and to see, and he says, this week I was besieged by this passion. How am I now doing? And then last year I was overcome by that passion to some extent. Where am I now? And so this sort of this having sort of some feedback, because if we're starting to go down and down and down, and we're not even aware of it, well, then we might just be thinking, well, oh, life is going on just fine. I'm okay. And so it's very crucial for there to be that sort of feedback in order to catch ourselves. Okay, so that's all I had for chapter 10. If no one else has any comments, we'll move on to chapter 11 now. And so here he's talking about being diligent, sedulous, to cut off the passions swiftly. And this is because, well, he says at the very beginning of the chapter, he says, even the least neglect in our spiritual struggle invites great dangers. And he talks about a physical example, how someone was sick, but then he didn't care for it, and then he ended up being stuck in bed for 40 days. And then Abbot Dorotheos points out this is exactly how the passions are. If I'm just a little bit negligent in one aspect of my spiritual struggle, let's say, not keeping the fast, I'll be a little bit loose here and there about keeping the fast. Well, then that loose thing will get looser and looser until the point where I'm barely fasting at all. And the same thing with all things, like with anger too. If I give into a little anger here, a little there, it can grow and grow, and then it's a real something that I can't. It's just sort of like alcoholic, where you can be addicted to the sweetness of the passion, where then, humanly speaking, you can't get free of it. Okay, and then on page 179, paragraph 114, he's trying to, Abbot Dorotheos is trying to remind us how serious this spiritual struggle is. He says, we see our brothers in the monastery suddenly taken from among us, and yet we do not become sober, even though we know that we will shortly confront death. And when he says shortly, he means like within maybe a few decades, perhaps, but still, in the big scheme of things, a few decades really is a short time. And then he says, he quotes the elder, says, if one loses gold or silver, he can always find more. However, if he who loses time cannot find more of it. And this is just a real truth that we're hit with more and more, I think, as we get older. At least that's my experience. I see, when I was younger, I would just, time was just thinking, oh, I'll just do this. But now I'm starting to see, wow, I'm already in my 50s, and wow, there's not much time left, and what's going to happen, and my judgment is coming, and what do I have to show for myself? And so, and then that's one thing else also my elder friend would say very much. He'd say, that when we're at the very end of our lives, when we're on a deathbed or just about there, that's when our conscience really wakes up. And that's when we really start thinking, oh, what did I do? I had so much time in I had years and years to work on myself, to fight against these passions before they got worse. And I didn't even try fighting. And now they're this huge burden. How am I going to be judged for them? And so that's why there's on our deathbed we have a huge amount of regret and really fear, of course, because we see that, wow, because our conscience always tells us that we could have done better. We know that we could have. I mean, yes, we're struggling, but we deep down we know we really can do better, and that's going to be a huge burden at the time of our death. Okay, and then on page 180, paragraph 115, he has this beautiful story from the Desert Fathers where the elder tells his disciples to pull up various trees of tiny little baby seedlings and medium and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I can just imagine how vivid it was in the minds of those people, of his disciples, that, wow, it really is hard to pull up a tree that's this big or this big. and it makes no sense. Why even wait? Just pull it up when it's just like this big, and you just with your fingers. And so, yeah, that's how it is. And so we do really need to have this introspection to ask ourselves, what passions do I have that are starting to grow, and I need to pluck them out now that they're easier. Okay, and then page 181, he has this quote from the Psalms, where it says, "O wretched daughter of Babylon, blessed shall he be that shall reward thee as thou hast rewarded us. Blessed shall he be who shall seize and dash thine infants against the rock." And so, of course, that's a very vivid and almost gruesome, image, to seize your infants and dash them against the rock. It's almost disgusting, yeah. But this is actually sort of typical of things in the Old Testament, where, I mean, obviously, God doesn't want us to take some baby and crush him on the rock. I mean, it's just disgusting, yeah. But I mean, there's just there's the Old Testament is very, very allegorical. And so, and as Abodrothos demonstrates in this chapter, how that what God is really asking us to do is not torture babies or something crazy like that, but really to get our thoughts to attack our passionate thoughts when they're infants, when they're just small and easy to fight against, and dash them against the rock, which, as he points out, is Christ. In other words, by calling upon Christ, we can be freed from these passions, and specifically with the Jesus prayer. And this is something, the Jesus prayer, I mean, that's a whole, we could be talking for days and hours, for hours and days for that. But one thing about the Jesus prayer that my elder would say is that there's something, I mean, he didn't use the word magic about it, but the way he described it, it was sort of like magic, because he says that when a person devotes himself to saying the Jesus prayer, the passions just sort of dry up and wither away and disappear in a way that you don't even realize, you don't even perceive how it is. And since you don't perceive it, for me, that qualifies as magic. so it is a extremely powerful thing. And the elder friend even said, it's a mystery. We don't know how it works, but it does definitely work. And yeah, so, all right. And then on page 182, he also is continuing his commentary on that Psalm verse. He says, "Blessed shall he be that shall reward thee as thou hast rewarded us." And then he says, well, we first have to learn what we have given and what we have taken in exchange. And he explains what we have given in our spiritual struggle. When we give into a passion, we've given over our will. And in exchange, we took sin on ourselves. And so the idea here is that the more we give into a passion, the more accustomed we are to its pleasure. In fact, even neurologically, they've found that if a person repeatedly does something that gives them pleasure, those neurons will actually fire more, and then create a pathway that's actually very strong. How's the saying? Neurons that fire together, wire together. I think that's the quote. So it's basically what they're showing is that these neurologists have shown that there is even a physiological basis for the passions. So I guess that what that means is that if you open up the brain of someone who's very passionate, you see all kinds of wiring in place where there shouldn't be wires, and the opposite for someone who's very holy. So yes, take the microphone.
It's okay. It's a short one. Our passions, demonic energy.
Are the passions a demonic energy?
Yeah.
Well,
How they vanish with the Jesus Christ. Yeah.
how they what with the
Going back to what you said, like they vanish.
they disappear. Yeah. So, and the way that the Holy Fathers talk about the passions is that there's really two causes, two sources. I mean, there's our own will, our own desire for something that's sinfully sweet, and the demons also trying to push us in that direction. And so it's not always clear sometimes to us which one is actually pushing us more. Is it just our own desire, or is the demons doing? I mean, there's one incident where Saint Joseph the Hesychast, he was living with his brother Father Athanasios, and Father Athanasios was having a lot of temptation with lustful thoughts, and so Saint Joseph was praying very hard for his brother. And then one day, Saint Joseph had a vision where he saw Father Athanasios, and there's some beautiful woman singing, and Father Athanasios was attracted to this singing and was walking towards her. And then when Saint Joseph woke up, he understood what this meant. He understood that the problem isn't the demons attacking Father Athanasius; it's Father Athanasius himself. He himself wants this passion. He wants this pleasure, and so it's his own will that's the problem, not the demons attacking him. So that there are both effects, both our own desires and the demons, and if we're very perceptive, we might be able to even be able to tell, is it the demons pushing me here, or is it my own will? Yes, Flora. Yeah.
Father, is there also an element of inherited passions?
Yeah, so one thing, the idea of inheriting a passion, I mean, this is something that happens. So in other words, if our parents have a certain passion, it's very likely that we'll get that passion, not necessarily because, well, I mean, it could even be genetic. I mean, there are people who are genetically predisposed towards certain passions, but it's much more likely to be sort of an environmental kind of thing, where if a person is growing up in an environment where, let's say, the natural thing to do when you're insulted is to insult the other person back, or to get angry or whatever, well, then you're trained from a very young age that, oh, this is what we do when we get insulted, we fight back. And then in other words, we are trained to be passionate from a very young age if parents are passionate. Yeah. So
Father,
yes.
I would like to ask a question. So, is that the same thing with the kids? Now are times where it is so normal to have relationships, and they see that everywhere, and it's a norm, and like they grow up in that kind of environment. And if that's so, how can we get away, since they all grow up, even if it's not in the family, it's from their cousins, it's from their relatives, it's from their the kids at school and everything.
Well, so there's if they see everyone around them being very not chaste, then yeah, and that's the truth. I mean, we are, there, it says in Proverbs, bad company ruins good morals. And so
But what about if it is in the family?
Yeah,
Like
that's the thing.
you cannot cut the relationship from inside the family,
Yeah,
can you?
exactly. So yeah. So if you're growing up with parents who have some passion or some sin that they're constantly doing, then yeah, then that'll be something that you might not even realize that it's a sin. You might not even realize that that's a bad thing. So yeah, that is a real problem. Yeah.
I have a quick question. I've heard before the idea that the passions are basically the misdirection of your soul's powers. Do you speak about that, and can you elaborate a little bit more on
Yeah,
that?
yeah. So the way that the Holy Fathers talk about passions is that they say, God has given us the ability to do things, for example, to get angry, and they say that this is a good thing. Anything that God has given us is good. It just how we use it can be bad. And so, for example, the ability to be angry, the Holy Fathers say that this is something very useful in our spiritual struggle, because if we can get angry with the demons who are tempting us, or even angry with ourselves that we're being lazy, well, this anger can destroy. Anger is a destructive kind of thing by nature, and it'll destroy the demonic attack. It'll destroy this passion, this weakness. And so we see this very vividly in some of the saints, especially like again, Saint Joseph the Hesychast. He was someone who was just very angry by nature. I think he just well, actually, maybe that's not fair to say angry by nature. I mean, he was someone who had a lot of well, in Greek it's the thymikon. It's the ability to be really fiery. That's a better word. Fiery. So with this fieriness, he was able to use this fieriness and just go all out again in his struggle against the demons. Whereas someone who's sort of mellow and sort of just sort of low key, they don't have that. They won't be able to fight with that same fieriness. So it is a very a beautiful and wonderful thing to be fiery, which is great for all you who are from the Mediterranean, because it seems to be just natural to people. So it's a tremendous power you have, but of course it's also, if it's misused, it can also be a real problem, because obviously, if you direct your anger against other people, well, then that's misusing the gift God has given you. And we can say that with even with all the passions, like the Holy Fathers say that the ability, what they call eros, is something that God has given us, that we can direct either towards our spouse or towards God. And so if a person has a lot of eros just by nature, they can use this to really enhance their prayer and make it very intense kind of thing. So yeah, so Johnny, that this is something that everything we have as terms of abilities, they're from God, and if we use them in the right way, then they're holy and help us. But if we misuse them, well, then that's when it becomes a sin.
They're the reverse of the virtues, basically. The passions.
Yeah, the passion. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and when Abadrotha is talking about we've given over our will, and in exchange we took sin on ourselves, this applies really to all kinds of things we can be enslaved to, because I mean there are some passions, I mean in sort of in the worldly sense of the word passion, not in the spiritual sense, that something else, addictions that are basically innocuous. They're not really harmful, but they can still enslave us. So for example, there's one person who wrote about this. He who admitted, yeah, I have an addiction to collecting classical music albums, and he had like, I don't know, thousands of them or something. And so it's an addiction where you're enslaved by this desire and you can't control yourself. And the problem with these addictions is that they do enslave us. And also, what the other thing the Holy Fathers point out is that whenever we become enslaved to one passion, it actually weakens us in a general way that makes us more susceptible to all the passions. So even though there's not really anything essentially wrong with having a whole bunch of classical music albums, but if you're enslaved to them, or anything like having a stamp collection, you have 5 million stamps or whatever, it can become a passion really, and so which weakens us. Yes, Sotiri.
I read something on the issue of desire recently that I wanted to mention. First of all, I read something about desire recently that I thought it was very, very interesting. In the Old Testament, God had a special love for a prophet named Daniel, and he was called the man of desires.
Yeah.
And so desire is very important in Orthodoxy. In the West, we have Descartes, who said, I think, so I exist.
Yes.
And rationalism was considered very important. And it was also considered that man has an upper and a higher spirit, a higher soul, which is the nous, the mind, and a lower one, which is the desires and the emotions.
Yeah.
But the saints of the Orthodoxy say that it's not just the mind that's important, but also the emotions and the desires are important, and that everything together, mind, emotions, desires, the soul, the body, everything is in the image of God, and not just the mind.
Oh.
And that the whole, everything together is in the image to God and has to be saved. So desires are very important. And that's why I read Saint Maximus the Confessor also said that Christ has two wills, a human and a divine. And of course, the human will submits and has obedience to the divine will. But both wills are very important, and for that reason, our desires have to be guided and led into. They are a power that God gave us to connect with Him. So we have to put all our desire into loving God. But when our desire is distracted into different directions, that's where our passions are taking, are being misguided. And we start desiring the baptismata instead of baptism, the creations instead of the creator. Beautiful things, money, other things that or even ourselves, our autoidolo, our
idol of ourselves, the idol of ourselves.
The idol of ourselves. When we direct our desire to the idol of ourselves, then we destroy basically the image of God.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something that reminds me of what my abbot and Madathas used to tell me. He said, we're trying to focus on Christ and not the externals of religion, like the beautiful chanting, the nice iconography, which of course are all good things, but they can become an idol if we're distracted from Christ. And the way he described was, it's like someone walks into the room, like and instead of saying, "Oh, hello, George, nice to see you, George," instead you react by saying, "Oh wow, look at this person! Look those clothes he's wearing! Look at those shoes! Those are really nice socks! Wow!" And you're not even paying attention to George, kind of thing. And so there is a real danger for that for us, even in our prayer life. I mean, in our church life, where we can be, because I mean, the Orthodox Church obviously is very rich in so many things. God has blessed the Orthodox Church with so much depth and richness that are supposed to help us, help raise our minds to God in prayer. But if we're not careful, we can get so caught up with, oh, what tone was that thing you just chanted? That was who composed that? All that kind of thing. And of course, with moderation, it can be good as long as it's not distracting from God rather than pulling you more towards God. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Give her the microphone there.
Speaking on having our mind fully on time, I heard these simple videos. It said that he was supposed to have a brain intervention, a brain surgery,
Yeah.
and he requested the doctor to not give him anesthesia.
Oh, yes.
And of course, like, that's impossible. What do you mean? Please, please, I beg you, do not give me anesthesia. And then he tells his spiritual children, Father, you know what you're talking about.
A little louder.
And then he said, yes, yes, I know. He said, if I truly concentrate on the cross of Christ, I would feel no pain whatsoever.
Wow.
So
And so he
He
did the
did.
operation
He
without
did.
anesthesia on his brain.
Kitty.
Wow. Yeah. So that's pretty intense. Yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah. Okay.
how far away.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions or any comments that you want to add? Because I don't want to open up a new subject because we have just like 2 minutes left. Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah, yeah.
Because we missed the previous, because we missed the previous lessons.
Yes.
2 or 3 of those. If you can give us something about πώς να ξεριζώσουμε το μάτι.
How to
Unroot
yeah.
passions.
Absolutely.
Κάτι έλεγε σε ένα κεφάλαιο εδώ και I would like to hear something from you. Forgive me if the others can hear.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, how to uproot the passion. I mean, that's like, I mean, like St. John the Ladder, St. John of Sinai, who wrote the book, The Ladder, that's basically the answer to your question. You know, how to uproot the passions. It's basically, you know, that's sort of like the handbook, I would say, that it's something that's so important that every Lent it's read in most monasteries, Orthodox monasteries, they read from cover to cover. But I mean, it's sort of, I don't know if I can answer that question, how to uproot the passions when it's, I mean, each passion, as we see, as St. John explains, and other Holy Fathers too, but each passion has its own ways that are helpful to uprooting it. And I don't know, is that what you wanted to hear? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, so I better stop here. And which one thing? So we'll continue on page 183 next week, but we'll also hopefully we'll finish this chapter and go on to the next one. So that's chapter 12, instruction 12, which starts on page 194, which is on the fear of future chastisement, etc., etc. So yeah, so read that chapter for next week. And also, I just want to make also one other announcement is that it turns out on April 20th, I won't be able to do the book club. That's so there'll actually be 3 Saturdays that we're going to miss. So we'll miss Holy Saturday. There'll be no book club. And then the Saturday before that, which is Lazarus Saturday, there's no book club. And then the Saturday before that, which is the Akafist Saturday. So that those 3 Saturdays, there'll be no book club. And so I'll also announce that, but that April 20th is the first Saturday that we're going to be missing. All right, well, thank you all for coming. Through the prayers of our Holy Fathers and Abba Dorotheus, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen. All right, God bless you all. Well, please have some of this food. We got it. This is actually from the monastery. The Jeroen and Melanie made this pizza kind of thing that has fake cheese on top and this thing with olives. Yeah, you gotta eat this up.
Just a quick question.
Yeah. Okay, let me just turn this off so people don't hear what you're saying. Okay, bye.
No confession.